Hey functions, okay, so we are going to move on. We are going to start adding and subtracting with unlike denominators, so with different denominators. So we are going to go ahead and get right into this because that's what I did in class. Okay, so right here are the steps that you're going to want to do. So step 1, we need to find the lowest common denominator. Sorry, the least common denominator. I don't know why I say lowest. Least common denominator. Then we want to state the domain. Then we're going to create the LCD in our fractions so that we can add or subtract them. Then we're going to do the operations that are in the numerator. We're not going to worry about the denominator once we created LCD. Then we're going to check to see if the numerator can factor. Then we'll simplify where possible. So what we are going to do is, so this is how I do this every single time. To create the LCD, I look in the first denominator and I write down all of the factors that I can. If it's not factored, like if I just get a trinomial, I need to factor it. This is just one monomial, so I'm just going to write it m. Then I'm going to go to the second fraction and say, okay, this is being multiplied. I've already got the m written down. I don't need to worry about it, but I do need the 4. And to create a common denominator, I would need to have 4 and m. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that 4m, set it not equal to 0. So I divide by 4, I get m cannot equal 0. So then my domain is always going to be all real numbers such that m does not equal 0. Okay, steps 1, 2, done. Now we need to create that least common denominator. So what I'm going to do is I'm missing a 4 in this first one, so I'm going to need to multiply the denominator by 4. But if I do that to the bottom, I have to do it to the top. Anything that's done to the bottom has to be done to the top. I can't just do it to the bottom. Also notice that 4 over 4 is just 1. So 4 over 4 is just 1, but I'm making it so that I can have a common denominator like we would with numbers. So if I had 1/3 plus 2/5, I would end up with, I'd multiply this by 5 over 5, which is just 1. 3 over 3, which is just 1, which would give me a common denominator of 15, and we would have, 5 plus 6. Okay, so same idea, but now we're doing it with variables. All right, so then I do that. 6 times 4 is 24 over 4m plus 1 over 4m. Now I can combine the numerator. I can do the operations of the numerator all over my LCD. So then I'm going to do 24 plus 1. Notice that the sign in between the two fractions, this sign right here, moves up with it when it goes like this. So we have 24 plus 1. Then I can do that, which is 25 over 4m, which doesn't simplify any further. That is my final answer. Okay. If you have questions, write them down because I will promise you I want you to ask them in class. Okay. We're going to move on. We have 2 over y minus 1 over y plus 4. So to create that LCD, I'm going to look at my first denominator. I have just y. Okay, so now I need to go back and look at this denominator in the second fraction. Whenever I have a y plus 4, or a variable plus a number, or a variable minus a number, or anything where there's more than one term, and remember terms are separated by pluses and minuses, I'm going to go ahead and put parentheses around these. That way I remember in my head, I cannot separate those. I got to keep them together. If I'm going to factor them, I'm going to factor them, but I can't. So I'm going to go ahead and put that parentheses, and I'm going to put y, where is it? Okay, y plus 4. All right. So that is my LCD. So then I got to think to myself for the domain, it's going to be all real numbers such that, well, what value of y would make that 0? That would be 0, so y cannot equal 0. Or what value of y will make this whole thing 0? -4, so it cannot equal -4. That's a -4. Okay, so now I need to create the LCD. So I'm going to need to multiply top and bottom by the missing factor that I don't have that is in my LCD. So y plus 4 is in my LCD and I don't have it, so I'm going to need to multiply the top and the bottom by y plus 4. And this one is missing a y, so I'm going to need to multiply the top and the bottom by y. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I am going to multiply that 1 by y. Okay, I need to distribute. So now we're into do the operations in the numerator. So I'm distributing the 2 here, and I'm going to move this negative sign up right there, and I'm going to write it all over one numerator. I'm sorry, one denominator. Excuse me, one denominator, my LCD. So now I get 2 times y, which is 2y, 2 times 4, which is 8. Negative 1 times y, or minus y, is y. Now I'm not done yet though, right? I've got to combine my like terms. So we've got a like term here and a like term here. So when I do that, I get 2y minus 1y, which is just y plus 8. I cannot factor this any further. I'm going to go ahead and leave the denominator the way it is. That is my final answer, and I'm done. All right, so now we're going to do this one. If we look at the first one, the LCD, we're going to get 2x plus 7. Do I already have that written down? I do. So we already have common denominators, so I don't have to worry about it. But I do still have to find the domain. So it's going to be all real numbers such that, now this is a really good example of what a domain could be. So I'm going to get minus 7, I end up with 2x cannot equal negative 7. Then divide by 2, I end up with x cannot equal negative 7 over 2. I want a fraction. This is a unit of fractions. I want a fraction. So just leave it as a fraction. But it can be a fraction. That's the whole point. Like in our domain, we can end up with a fraction. All right, so the denominators are already the same. So I am going to do something special with this. So I'm going to put this all over my LCD since it's just the one thing. This right here, I'm going to leave it, I'm going to move it up with the rest of it like I have before. But because this is subtraction, and just like in Unit 1 when we were doing our matrices, when I said we have to distribute to everything when we're subtracting, and just like in Unit 2 when we were doing operations with our functions, and if we were subtracting functions, we had to distribute the negative to everything, I put these in parentheses, okay? So I'm going to keep it that way, everything in the second fraction in parentheses, so that I remember that I've got to distribute that negative to everything. So this negative has to be distributed to this and to this. So if I do that, I end up with negative 1 times negative x, which is a positive x, and negative 1 times a negative 14, which is a positive 14. All right, so now I've done all my distributing. I need to combine my like terms, and I end up with 6x, because 5x plus 1x is 6x, and 7 plus 14 is 21. Well, look at that. I've done all my operations. Now I just need to see, it says, can I factor? Well, let's find out. Let's see. Oh, look, I can. I can do a GCF. So it looks like I can pull out a 3, and I need to get a 2x and 7. So then I end up with 3 times 2x plus 7. So when I factor, I need to make sure I keep everything. Now it says simplify if possible. This has to be the last step. You cannot start finding big ones until you've put everything together in the numerator and then you factored. Has to be the last thing you do. If you do it early, you'll undo some of the work that you've done so that you could combine like terms and you could add or subtract them together. So simplifying, looking for those big ones, that has to be the last thing that you do. The very last thing you do. All right. So it looks like we do have a big one right here. It's a big one. So we end up with 3 times 1, which is just 3. So when we subtract those two fractions, we end up with 3. Okay, now we are going to do this one. All right, so we have 2 over r minus 2. Guess what? I've got 2 different terms here. I'm going to go ahead and put parentheses around it right away. That way I know I can't separate it. I've got an r minus 1, 2 terms. I've got more than one term. I want to put parentheses. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is write everything that's inside my first fraction denominator, which is r minus 2. And then oh, look, this is totally different, so I'm going to write r minus 1. Okay, my domain is always going to be all real numbers, such that, well, what value of r is going to make that 0? Positive 2. So 2. and then positive 1 will make that 0. So r cannot equal 2 or 1. Now I need to create that LCD. This already has an r minus 2, but I need an r minus 1. So I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by r minus 1. This one already has an r minus 1, but I need an r minus 2, so I'm going to multiply the top and the bottom by r minus 2. So when I do that, I end up with this. So now what we're going to do is now we created the LCD. So now we both, look, there it is. Common denominator, common denominator. Now I need to do the operations. That means I'm going to distribute this 2. I have a binomial times a binomial. So that means I put it on the outside of a box. So I'm going to do r times 3, and r minus 2. R times r is r squared. Negative 2 times r is negative 2r. R times 3 is 3r. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. I combine my like terms inside here, and I end up with r squared. Now, I'm going to put my answer to this, r squared. 3r minus 2r is 1r minus 6. That's my numerator right here. So again, I'm going to put this in parentheses. So that minus sign went up right here. Where's mine? It went up right there, and I put this in parentheses. Again, I want to distribute that negative to all 3 terms. Okay, so negative 1 times r squared is negative r squared. Negative 1 times positive r is negative 4. And negative 1 times negative 6 is a positive 6. Okay, we're still on step 4. We are going to combine like terms. I don't have any other negative r squared, so I'm going to write that first. I do have this r. So 2r minus r is 1r. And negative 2 plus 6 is 4. So I end up with negative r squared plus r plus 4. Now, can I factor that numerator? Well, what are the factors of negative 4 that add up to 1? 1. So we have 1 and 4. That doesn't work. 2. Nope. So there are no factors, which means I am completely done. Okay, that was the last example I did in class today. If you have any questions, hopefully you wrote them down, and we will go over them, ask them in class. I know that this is hard. I told you guys yesterday that it could take you several minutes to do one of these problems, and that is true. Tomorrow we will have time to work on this in class, and then we will take a formative on Friday so you can see where you're at. I hope you have a great day. I will see you all tomorrow. Bye. Oh yeah, don't forget to sign up for dodgeball.